Let's Talk Native is produced at the LTN Studios on the Cattaraugus territory of the Seneca Nation. We break all the rules for Native media by peeling back the layers of assimilation and indoctrination. We may step on a few toes through our examination of culture, art, politics, history, and identity. But the real goal here is to bring our people together by breaking down what separates us. So, welcome to Let's Talk Native with John Kane.
Sego, and welcome to Let's Talk Native. I'm John Kane. I am your host. And as promised on the last program, we are doing a two-part series on the short documentary, The Bears on Pine Ridge. And we featured the director, Noel Bass, on the first episode. And on this episode, we have one of the principals of the film, Tiny DeCory, joining us. So let me just go ahead and thank and welcome Tiny DeCory for giving us your time and for joining us here on Let's Talk Native.
Yeah, hi. I'm happy to be here, calling from beautiful Pine Ridge, South Dakota, and very excited to share information and to gain knowledge from this event.
Well, and again, to those who are listening to this podcast, let me break some of it down. Tiny has been very active in Pine Ridge for many years, involved in suicide prevention, specifically what is now more recognized as a major tragedy in terms of youth suicide. And there's a film that has been just recently produced. It's in the film festival circuit, so to speak, right now, called The Bears on Pine Ridge. So Tiny, I'm gonna let you take it from here. Explain to listeners what exactly are the Bears, or what is the Bears, and we'll go from there.
Okay, the Bear program, we are a youth organization that started back in 2000. When we found out that a lot of our high school seniors were graduating on the 3rd and 4th grade level, and they were not going on to college. So we started there, and we surveyed kids as to why they dropped out of school. We spent a couple of years doing that, getting everything in order, and then we launched the Bear program. So we used our workers out there, our mentors, from a program called Youth Opportunity to help us get it all set up. And then we just kind of started off and gave birth to a youth development program that works every day to strengthen families. And we took a turn on our platform from strictly education to suicide awareness, because we were losing a lot of our kids. We've had kid after kid after kid take their lives. So we switched over, and we kind of became a suicide awareness program as well.
So the Bears, in terms of, and to explain what the Bears are, it is really your use of young people in kind of soft, kind of cuddly costumes that are really taking on an alter ego to reach out to other kids, and that's part of what that's kind of the foundation of what you're calling the Bears program, right?
Yes, the kids bring the costumes to life, and some of the kids that get in those costumes are survivors of suicide. And a lot of them are just survivors of life, because they go through divorces. Their parents go through divorces, and the parents get the divorce, and they also divorce their kids too. And so they come from majority comes from families that are broken up, and we have those that are struggling in every day. So what we do is they come in and they work through the program, and pretty soon we get them into the costume and they come to life. And after they perform, they see all these kids just leave the bleachers and hug them and grab their legs, and they want to mouse, girl mouse, boy mouse. They want to play with their ears, and it's just really a good feeling for these young men and women, and we have boys and girls in the costume as well. So under the bear program, we have a performing arts group, and they're the ones that go out and they do the dances and they do the skits. They talk about life. They talk about life every day, how hard it is, and they also talk about how wonderful life is, and that life should be lived. And it's all with the kids. Everything is about the kids, you know. And if you watch the documentary, you can see how they performed in front of thousands of people, and you saw the bear side with the costumes, and we also do real life skits where a young man tries to hang himself, and we get to him before it happens. We have babies having babies. They don't know where the father is. They don't know who the father is. And those are real life skits that we bring them to life.
Wow.
And so the young people in the audience, they can see themselves in some of our skits. And so it draws them to the bear kids. So our bear kids are able to talk with them and to let them know that I was just like you. I am just like you, going through a lot.
Now, one of the things that going back, before there was much attention being given to these youth suicides, for all intents and purposes, in the United States, they considered youth suicides only as a statistical anomaly. Like there were so very few that they didn't even account for them, even as they were putting their numbers up on suicides across different backgrounds. But then it became apparent that the increase in the suicides that was happening on native territories in particular, not just Pine Ridge, but in other territories as well, started becoming a real concern and was increasing at an alarming rate. And that's when you shifted from education towards suicide prevention.
I lost your train of thought. I have a kid here tugging at my leg.
I understand that completely. It's what you do. No, I was just kind of recounting how, prior to some of the work that you've done and even the national attention given to the youth suicides that have been taking place in native territories, there was essentially almost no awareness to youth suicides. It was considered a statistical anomaly across the United States. And it's only been through work by people like you and others that have suggested that this is an epidemic at this point, and that it requires, very, very specific action. So, and that's where you had shifted from being primarily based or geared towards education and high school dropouts and that kind of stuff, and the quality of education towards suicide.
Yes, John, every day I remind myself that I will not accept suicide as something normal and natural. Yeah, we are born and we die. But when the creator decides to call you home, that's how it is. Not when you decide to take a rope and put it around your neck and hang yourself. Are you cut too deep that you bleed to death? Are you taking 95 gabapentins and we can't wake you up? And I say that is not the norm, and I will never accept it as the norm. And so the work is hard. Yeah, everybody's, people talk. We have a group come through and said, why do your people die at such a young age? I said, I wished I knew. But we don't. We have alcohol, we have drugs that are involved, and that too gets involved with our young people. But, we have to bring attention. We have to bring attention because it's not normal for us to take our lives. It's not. We should be living our lives to the fullest each day. But yet we have a lot of young people out there that don't have that normal day. They don't have a normal day. They wake up hungry. They go to bed hungry. They're being sexually violated in their own homes. I mean, and some of them are living in cars. They're living wherever they can under somebody's porch because that's their everyday life.
Homes without power and heat. I know that's also something that
our plumbing.
Yes.
Our plumbing. We still have dirt roads here. And so we walk up to the kid and we say, how you doing today? After they slept in a car. Well, how in the heck am I supposed to be doing? You know, I sitting up in a junk car, all rust. There's mice in this car. How am I supposed to be doing?
Yeah.
So, we have to turn that around and say, gosh, it's good to see you today. Now let's get something to eat.
Well, and
You know,
I mean, one of the things that that oftentimes gets brought up is the obvious historical trauma that Native people carry with them, and everything from massacres and hangings and land loss and and residential schools, all of that. But much of what the kids are experiencing is only it's only coupling that historical trauma with the trauma of what life is like today, and and part of that most of this can be attributed to the abject poverty that is the direct result of American policies towards Native territories.
that's true. You talk about historical trauma. You have a lot of these teenagers that are going to college, and they've completed 2 years of college, and I had one say to me, Tiny, why does your historical trauma have to be my historical trauma? And I said, you know what, you're right. He said, I got to work to get out of it. And the reason he said that is because he was in foster care when he was a baby. He was born, and the minute he was able to leave the hospital, he was put into foster care. So he was raised, he went from home to home to home to home. And the only trauma that he remembers in his life is the beatings that he got in those foster homes. And he didn't hear the historical trauma that the rest of us heard about the mothers taken from their children sent to boarding schools and all that. He didn't hear that, how it's handed down. He didn't hear how the historical trauma was handed down from his great grandmother to his grandmother to his his was what he lived. But he said it doesn't have to be mine, and I'm trying to fix that by getting all the counseling that I can get and by helping others. But think about it. There's a lot of that.
Right.
As we speak, they're experiencing their own historical trauma today.
Well, and that's and again, you can't help but attribute that to much of the poverty that exists on Native territory, and which is not an accident. I mean, I know Simon Moya Smith in the film talks about the intention and what reservations were designed to be, which was a place for Native people to go die. And even as we try to carve out lives, there are so many things that work against us, and at the state level and at the federal level. So, and as you're trying to address the worst possible outcome for somebody struggling, not just with historical trauma, but the trauma that we experience every day today, it's almost like, how can you address it without creating some avenue to create hope and or some prospect for the future for these kids in an environment that the federal government and the state governments have really tried to prevent prosperity from.
Each day we tell our young people, don't worry about the government. You got to worry about yourself. And it's hard for them to go to college because everybody thinks that because of the treaties that our education is free, that we don't have to pay to go to school, but we do. We have to get Pell Grants just like everybody else. And when some of them go to school as that freshman year, they end up having to take out loans and this and that. And pretty soon they can't enroll the second year because they owe so much in loans. So they end up coming home. And thank God we have Ogallala Lakota College, which is a 4-year accredited college that the kids can come and fall back to. But every kid wants to leave the res. Think about it. I'll say almost every kid wants to leave the res to see what it's like, because they're so pulverized here. They want to see what it's like, and they want that opportunity to make it, And so it's tough for them, and some do make it. Some do make it out of here.
Yeah, I agree with you. It is the problem that exists on our territories has created almost this mass exodus of people who only see opportunities by leaving our territories, and I'm sure that adds to some of what you guys are dealing with. Hey, I do have an opportunity to have Eileen join the program, so I want to thank you for your time and for the great work that you're doing, and then I want to give Eileen Janis a chance to to fill in and tell part of her story as it relates to the work that you guys are doing. So let me go ahead and introduce Eileen Janis. Eileen is also featured prominently in the Bears on Pine Ridge. Eileen and Tiny have worked very closely on the Bears program and on much of this suicide prevention. So let me introduce Eileen Janis to Let's Talk Native.
Thank you.
We're going through a little of this with Tiny, but I also want to again express my concern that for all of the issues that we face on our territories, and obviously suicide being among the worst possible outcomes, but also missing and murdered Indigenous women. I mean, some of the substance abuse issues, all of these things. Much of this can be attributed directly to the poverty that's on our territory. As I was finishing up with Tiny, she talked about the strong desire that so many kids on Native territories, on Pine Ridge in particular, have to just leave the territory. It's like their goal in life is to get out, because there's nothing that has been built up on our territories to provide hope and prospects for the future. And that must make the work that you do that much more difficult, knowing that there is an absence of a goal for somebody to accomplish something there on territory, from going from youth to adulthood.
Yes, it's really sad, and we do have a good college center, and we do have things that can be done here, and but they see no hope in it. Same people holding jobs because of all the unemployment, and it's just hard for them to see the light here.
Yeah, I mean, because even if you go out and you pursue higher ed and try to pursue, education towards a career, there's very little opportunity to have that career realized back on our Native territories, and in Pine Ridge in particular.
Yeah, that's true, and it's disheartening, because some of them could be, you start from wherever and you work your way up, and you learn more and more about our own people and everything else, and it's so then you build a rapport, but they can get their higher ed. There's many of them that have and it's just hard to get a job here. It's hard to get anything going here, because we are so limited in resources.
Sure. I mean, it's one of the calls to action that I try to promote is this idea that from even, from community to community, we need to do more to support each other, not just financially, but in terms of the types of trade and commerce and the type of opportunities. Look, it's great that a film has been produced here. But film production and theater and arts are among those things that if we could promote and actually realize that there could be careers in it, that's one of those things that could be among the things that we try to build on our territories.
Yeah. So I mean, it would be nice if we could take all the youth out and teach them our traditional things, the bow and arrow and the drying of meat and all that, but it's just, we're so far apart, we're so desolate, and the transportation is nothing here right now.
Yeah.
And with our parents having a hard time, no jobs, no cars, nothing, it's tough. It's tough.
Well, talk to me a little bit about the film and what you guys are hoping will be accomplished by telling the story.
That they understand that we don't get a monthly check every month. Everybody thinks natives do. We don't get per capita. We're the poorest county. We live in poverty, and our kids are strong, though. They have a lot of resilience, but it's just, people always say, it's in the past, let it go. But I still say the trauma from what they did to our ancestors holds us hostage. And I just want people to know that Pine Ridge is here. We're trying. We have volunteers. We have people that want to do things. It's just we don't have the resources. So we do the best we can with what we have. And we're very unique from the rest of the world, because we have to solve these problems with what we have with
Right.
nothing almost. And but we do it, and we try to give our kids hope through other ways, so with parenting and grief, and we change it to fit our cultural ways and our way of life. And so like with SAMHSA grants and all these other grants, it's really, they want certain kind of numbers, and we can only give certain things because of where we live. And so to get these grants, they just like set us up to fail. So it's really, we're in a catch 22 all the time. And so any of these federal government programs, we are like set up to fail. And we wish that we had more with understanding of our cultural ways when they do send grant monies and or anything.
Well, and there's a lot, when people, point to the historical trauma, oftentimes the assumption is that we're talking about something that was so very long ago. But I mean, it was only in the 70s that they felt they had to even pass a law that would stop the outlawing of ceremony. So it's
Yeah.
and so you add into how current some of that trauma from the past comes, and the fact is that it isn't just historical trauma. The fact that our people now are living in these very, very impoverished situations, that's not historical trauma. That's contemporary trauma. The
Yeah,
idea that
that is.
that you've got the highest unemployment rates, and I've heard numbers in the 85% range, the lowest mean household mean income and that kind of thing. It makes it very, very difficult to challenge many of these ills that have affected our territories. And I'm sure this has got to be the hardest work among the hardest things for you guys to overcome in the work that you do.
Oh, yes, it is. And it's so but it means so much if we could get a youth to smile, or if we could solve some problems for them. That's our reward, is just giving them that hope for the next day, the next week. And so like many of our people are surviving daily. So they get up in the morning and say, okay, how am I going to get supper on the table for my family tonight? Or how am I going to get to work with no gas? Do I pick gas, or do I pick buying trash bags to clean up? I mean, that's an everyday life choice for our people.
Well,
What is
and
our
it's even worse than
biggest
that. I mean,
priority?
every year, in spite of the fact that many native territories have extractive industries, with for fossil fuels, we hear every year of people not just on Pine Ridge but other places that freeze to death in homes
Yeah.
without heat or without electricity or
Yes.
without plumbing.
Yes. And the thing about it too is, people say mascots don't mean anything, but what mascots did was dehumanize us. It made us like we were not real people. And so they just ignore, um they can't understand a lot of the way our children think in schools and everything, because it's like we're not real, we're not human, we're just what the movies put out and what the mascots do, with the big noses and everything. And you still hear it today in Rapid City, lazy Indians or dirty Indians, and things like that. And
Well,
it's
there was a few years back when there was that whole incident with those crew from school going to Rapid City to watch a semi-pro
yeah.
hockey game, and the people up in the box suites dumping beer on the native kids below them. So yeah, no,
Yeah.
and again, I don't think people can realize, and I'm glad you brought up the mascot issue, because what the mascot issue does is it creates this false narrative that this image of the noble savage is out there, but it doesn't tell the truth of what we experience historically or what we're experiencing contemporarily.
Yes, that's true. And it's just so they don't believe it. They don't believe the 85% unemployment.
Yeah,
They
how could
don't
that be a real number,
believe
right?
the
Yeah.
yeah, because they're at 20% or 30% in other places, and they don't believe all of we're higher, 9 times higher than the national average with cancer, or with suicide, or with diabetes, and we really are. The numbers are really that bad, and it's because our life changed when they put us on reservations and told us, sit there. We're going to bring you your food. We're going to bring you this. We're going to bring you that. And so everybody sat there all those years because they were under attack. They could not move and go hunting and gardening and doing all this stuff. So we sat there and we took what they gave, and now we're junk food. We're all these things that they did, and it is genocide. It really is, and they want us now to eat healthy, and prices are so high that we can't even get healthy food. I mean, to feed your whole family.
Yeah.
So it's like I said, it's a catch-22 all the way around for us, and we just want to be recognized as we are a strong nation. We are trying, and our kids are so resilient, but we lost our values and our ways. We didn't lose them. We just put them aside, and we got to teach them again.
Well, and much of it was stripped away. I mean, and again, you look at the the lifestyle changes. These were imposed. So when we talk about the problems that exist on our territory, those were policy driven. Though much of this is intentional, and I think what we're trying to overcome right now is both raising the awareness and then overcoming this this imposed abject poverty that our people have been subjected to. Because I don't think anybody, when the federal government developed this reservation system where they took away so much of our lands and put us on these postage stamp sized pieces of property, it was never geared towards success. I honestly, whether they intended for us to fail and die on these territories, or just realize that there was so very little hope. I mean, Tiny talked about how many kids want to leave the territory. I think the federal government, in the back of their mind, hopes that we all vacate our territories and that somehow just slide into the bottom rungs of their, the dominant culture around us, and that our territories become vacant lots.
That's so true. That's so true. And it's just we're trying to break them out of that mold, break them out of that thinking. And so when people get a new position, like our tribal council, they take them in and they train them. They say, we're going to do orientation. So they tell them everything they can't do. I always say, ignore it. Try it. You never know. We might be able to get this done,
Sure.
And but it's just hard because we've been so beaten down a lot that they will not stand up to non-natives and say, okay, well, we'll just follow the rules. Well, come on, let's break some rules, guys. Let's get this going. Let's move,
we need to create the rules. And I think that's one of the things that, the dependency on the state or the federal government to solve this problem is, that's been, we've read that already. We know that that's not going to happen. So it is on us. Eileen, tell me this. Do you have a website or a means for people to send donations specifically for the work that you guys are doing?
Yes. On Facebook, it's the Bear Project.
Okay. And from that Facebook
it has
link,
everything on there.
From a Facebook link, you can show how to go to a website or a PayPal or some crowdsourced funding mechanisms.
Yes, we're a 501c3, so it's on there.
Okay.
Everything's on there.
All right. So we'll make sure that when we air this, we post the link. Is there a website as well, or just Facebook?
Just Facebook right now.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll make sure that we try to promote that as much as possible. Now, I know the film is right now being shown in various film festivals. I know that Noel talked to me about the film festival in Ontario and one in New York City, and the one that is currently making the film available through the film festival you're in right now. Is it the hope that you guys will get this film out to other Native territories? Because I got to believe that some of the networking, I think it's great to get it out into the dominant culture around us and tell the story. But man, I think as Native people, we need to do more to support each other. And I think telling these stories, and look, there are some Native territories that are more affluent than others. And I'm not saying that those territories don't have problems too. But I think if we worked together from territory to territory, it also creates the means for our children to go to another territory and realize that there are relationships that are still Native that we can have that could be fulfilling.
Oh yeah, we hope that it goes to other reservations and that we get calls from them and want to work together, and maybe they can help us and we can help them.
Well, we are putting this out on my podcast, and this is Let's Talk Native. We do our show here on the Seneca Nation territory of Cattaraugus, which is in what considered Western New York. We're out near Buffalo, New York. But we get this out there everywhere. I will continue to talk about this, and maybe I'll even get you to have you join me on my. I do a radio show in New York City and Washington D.C. Maybe we'll try to set something up where I get you and Tiny to join me on my radio program as well.
Oh yeah, that would be nice. We would be up for that.
All right. Well, I want to thank you so much. Again, I want to give my thanks to Tiny DeCory and Eileen Janis. The work that you guys are doing is phenomenal. I think Noel put it best. You guys are heroes, and I know, but people are not usually comfortable with that label. But it sounds like the work that you guys are doing is just incredible, and and I want to make sure that we can support you in any way that we can.
Thank you so much.
All right, folks. Thanks for listening. This is again the second part of a two-part series. If you're catching this podcast, I encourage you to check out the one previous to this, featuring Noel Bass, the director of the film "The Bears on Pine Ridge," which feature both Eileen Janis and Tiny DeCory. Thank you for listening. Do check out the film if you get a chance to, and support the great work that these two wonderful women are doing. And thanks for listening. I am John Kane. This is Let's Talk Native.
Think about me one more time before you go. Someday you'll know. Someday you'll know. You already know what I'm going to say. I've been feeling this way for far too long.